Bless up for tuning in to Project Chaney. Magic happens when you question everything. Conspirituality becomes reality, weirdness is welcomed, and it's okay to change your mind. Big up yourself.
Hey, you guys. Welcome to another episode of Project Chaney. As always, I am your sometimes cheerful and always honored host, Chaney. So how are you guys today? I have been thinking a lot this week about the term precious illusions. What is a precious illusion? I don't know why the first thing that I thought of in a precious illusion was the relationship title that we have with whoever we're with, whether that be our boss or our employee or our wife or our husband, or maybe even the most precious of illusions would be like the title of friend. What is that? What's a friend? What is a person that you decide for whatever reason you show up for every day? It's like this unsaid tether or scale between the two of you. And over the lifetime of your friendship, you hopefully are both putting the same amount of weight on your side of the scale. But at what point does the scale tip and it's time for you to walk away from that precious illusion? At what point does the dollar of currency tip and you decide it isn't a currency that you want to partake in anymore? What makes you believe in Bitcoin or crypto, dead energy? What makes you believe in that? Because you read something about it? Because Jack Ma, some billionaire that was created on paper that you're assuming exists, told you it was a good business investment? What's an investment? Is that an illusion? Some idea that you put money into a 401k or a Roth IRA, or what is the investment of that illusion? Do they wash it away every 20 years? Is the stock market real? I don't think it is. How many of you out there think it is? And then all these businesses. Is Amazon real? What is that? What is the company of that's taking all these other companies and delivering their goods, actually making it so that if you make a product as a small business and it sells well on Amazon, Amazon will make China make a cheaper version of that product, sell it on their site for tons cheaper, and put you out of business. What kind of illusion is that? Is your government an illusion? Is the person on your TV pretending to be your president an illusion? Is the fear that you fear about an invisible virus an illusion? What's a virus? What's going viral? Is Bernie Mittens and Tiger King, did we really create that? Do you really believe we controlled what got out there? Or is there just some number of an amount of thumbs up and thumbs down that you're believing in? Who is creating your illusion? And how long have you been believing in it? When did it start? Christmas and Easter, church. When did the illusion start? The hospital? The illusion of health? the hospital you were born in, the place they take sick people, and they actually have you convinced at your birth just to remind you that you're going to die, the illusion of life or the illusion of death. I don't know. I think the most precious illusion of all is love. And it's always there. Even when you really fucking hate something, you can only really fucking hate it because somewhere, maybe it broke your heart. Maybe you loved it once. I don't know. Heartbreak, is that an illusion? Okay. That was me and just questioning myself with all the stuff that I don't really know. I just am maybe starting to at the beginnings of realizing what resonates with me and realizing the truth that just feels real, not because I've read it and not because I wrote it, but because I just feel it. I think you guys are kind of on this journey with me too. And I think you're also at this place where if you're willing to unlearn everything you thought you know, and if the quote unquote smartest of you out there are really the ones that realize you know nothing, I don't know. Maybe breaking the matrix is like agreeing upon this precious illusion. I don't know. Maybe I just wrapped my own thoughts in like a knot into my head. Hang myself in a noose of intellect or something. What else, you guys? Yeah, I've been working at setting boundaries this week. And setting boundaries aren't always easy in every way, in the little and big. And as a person who considers myself a pretty badass bitch, and I resonate in a pretty more masculine than feminine way, I am meek and kind of a pushover when it comes to setting my boundaries. I'm very unscorpio about it. And I don't know why that's so hard. I don't know why is it the conflict of setting the boundary? I'm not really nervous about conflict. I guess when people are like, oh, I like to avoid conflict. Don't we all? Don't we all? Well, I was about to say, who's out there trying not to avoid conflict? And then I thought of a few people right in my mind, like, never mind. Some people are legitimately craving conflict. In the boundary setting, it's like from your deepest self, because everybody's in this like, is this person sent to me for a reason? Am I supposed to know everybody? Am I like, am I so love and light that I'm just gonna like, if a man asks for my jacket, I'm gonna give him his shirt too, honey? Like whatever, I don't know, whatever biblical tropes or things that you just keep giving until what? There's nothing left to give, until all the good people in your life have none of you left because you've just been loosed by the dark riders of other people. I don't know. But we're here and you guys are listening. So this is what's kind of been going on with me this week. Trying to figure out, being all peace and love and light, and also being a badass scorpion bitch who loves playing in her black ooze and also doesn't want to hurt people with a venomous tongue and don't want to hurt people that, regardless of what our precious illusion is together in the future, I still don't want them to carry the baggage of my trauma. And that's kind of what we do sometimes. when we set, or maybe don't set the boundaries in time, and we allow people to trigger these traumas and dredge them up in ourselves, and then we react, causing us to maybe have a whole new trauma. I don't know. So precious illusions, setting boundaries, and I feel like I want to talk about something fun. Do I have any fun facts of the universe that are something goofy? And I think I want to get recertified in scuba diving. That's a Florida thing that I should be taking advantage of. Yeah. Go swim with some sharks down in Key West with my brother or something. Who knows? Anyways, I really love you guys. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Thank you for showing up for another episode. You are lucky today that you get to hang out with somebody I consider really magic. And I know magic sometimes makes religious people clutch their pearls. They are nervous of that word magic. But, you can call it energy if you want to. And some people are gifted with realizing how much control they have over that energy. And there is an infinite amount of ways for you to learn and play and experience that energy. And you're probably doing it every day. So if you're chilling at work or laying in your bed, dozing off to sleep, or driving in your car on your way to the grocery store, maskless, and you're just looking for a little good energy to remind you that we are in a magical realm with mystical creatures, and we're all kind of wonderful, and precious illusion or not, look how powerful we are. Look at all these connections and creations and growth that we're doing by ourselves and together as a collective. So I love you guys. I feel you guys. I make sure you're following me on Instagram. That's the place I guess I'm at the most. I am on Twitter too. You can do that at Project Chaney. On Instagram, I'm trying to be real organized so you can find all the shows I've done and reach out to all the awesome guests I've had. So if you're questioning a method they're using or a book they're reading, or you just want to tell them they're awesome, or you want them to do Reiki on you, you'll be able to find all those things at Project Chaney on Instagram or at projectchaney.com. And if you're feeling a little more asshole, and maybe you just want to laugh, or maybe you just want to learn, or maybe you just want to hang out with me, you can also find me on Instagram at Chaney in Wonderland. I think there's underscores in between that. Shadow ban sometimes. You have to type in the whole thing. But I really do dig you guys. I thank you for coming on this journey with me. I'm really looking forward to getting to meet more and more of you and getting to have a sit-down conversation. I can't believe how brave and magnificent and the things you guys are going through out there, and it's felt, and I'm here for it. Okay, I love you. Listen to Caleb Spears. Go check out his website and get a little more magical. All right. Welcome back to Project Chaney. I have with me today a new friend of mine, your friendly neighborhood wizard, your practitioner of energy, and it's my friend Caleb Spears. Welcome to Project Chaney.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
I'm excited about this. This is an interesting show for me because you actually work in something a lot of people talk about. We hear like the yoga end of things, or Kundalini. We hear a lot of that talk, or we hear people talk about chakras, or we hear even people say looshing all the time. Looshing's a big, I'm looshed. Oh, that's loosh. That's a big, huge word that's new in the conspiracy world. So when was this walk for you started, where it broke away from traditional?
Broke away, yeah. Well, from the time I was young, I was always something like, I could tell that the way that I saw things was a little different than how other people did. And when I was young, you'd make mistakes and mention things, and they, parents would look at you like you were strange or whatnot. So there was always that element. But I kind of took a hard right it was about between 10 and 12 years ago. It was a process for a couple of years. But yeah, a little over a decade.
Okay, so you're not 150-year-old Merlin, or internally
No.
do you feel that way?
I feel older than I am, but they say I look younger than I am, so it kind of all balances out, I guess.
So I don't know why this is my big question. I don't know if it'll just be a season 1 question or if it'll change or whatever, but who or what is God to you right now?
Oh, okay. For me, I'd say that God is source. And so however we need to see that, I think we can project that onto source, and source will project that back to us in a way that we can use or that will help us. So I'm not too big into the micromanaging God, but I also don't believe that things are fated or accidental or purely chance. And so in that way, I would say God is source, kind of the progenitor or the being that put things in motion. That's my perspective.
What are your thoughts on like simulation theory with that? Or would it be the same idea as a source energy projection?
Yeah, the simulation thing makes a lot of sense to me, as far as I believe that we have a lot of ability to manifest what we experience. And in the same way, you'll have the police, and there'll be 3 witnesses, and they all saw 3 different things, even though they were looking at the same incident. I feel like we manifest our realities in this really similar way. And so, yeah, as far as like things rendering, to me, that's almost not separatable or not really definable from how we manifest things as we're perceiving them. So, yeah, I like the simulation theory. I absolutely believe that there's some people that are running literally just on loops and tapes. And I don't know, I can't really trace origins as to why that would be, if they've sort of lost their souls or lost themselves. And so they're just a conglomerate of like social constructs inside of themselves. But yeah, I've seen there's some people that are home and some people that are not home. And there's some things that seem real, and some days entire swaths seem so two-dimensional you could almost poke a hole in it and see past the curtain. So
could you almost do studies of people? The better you get at dealing with these energies or honing in, could you do studies of these people that are on these loops or tapes where you would get better at seeing them? Where you're like, oh, that person, oh, those patterns are the same.
Yeah. For me, everything kind of comes down to establishing a baseline of their behavior, or I guess my experience with their behavior. And people that are more NPC level or kind of run on these loops, you'll find that after you've been with them or been in contact with them for a certain amount of time, everything's on repeat. And sometimes they'll even start retelling the stories. The reactions will be the same. Like how many "oh, I'm surprised" faces can they give until you start to realize, hey, this is literally just on cue. You give this reaction. You're not actually reacting to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but especially in a lot of the elderly folks, it seems like the facade becomes less polished because their loops are old now. They've kind of dated. And so their reactions are well worn, well grooved in them. And then they're just popping off, regular conversations will trigger them. And so instead of, wasn't it a nice day and how's the weather? that kind of a loop. And you realize it's not that they don't, care about me personally or the interaction. It's that's as deep as it actually goes. So.
I know it's almost like their programming's outdated, and they even the way they make it so that we don't listen to their programming, so we catch on to this loop, is by they put these like racist and sexist things now in this programming that we're like, stop listening to this person. There are all these things that so all this other stuff must be nonsense. So we never get to pay attention like to these earlier loops.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation. Yeah, I've wondered before why they have the need to transition our culture generation to generation, where before it would take a couple generations to really kind of shift things. I mean, I don't know if you call it olden times, but, if your last name was a lot of times associated with your profession, and everybody that was a Spears, for instance, was known for, being good at this craft, or being, a lot of times even personality types were assigned to whole families, and that sort of thing. And now it seems like it's really, society or culture is really invested in having each generation very separate from the previous one. And so I think that could be part of it, like just what you were mentioning.
Do all the Spears, are they good dancers and make up really groovy songs? Is that like, no, but seriously, what's your family like? Do you know like your family's lineage of what your name came from?
Yeah, I think we hail from Scottish origins, where we were the Spears or the pikemen, like Night Watch, and maybe even like the spearmen and battle, or it could have been the spear makers. It's whatever the genealogist is invested in, that thinks is the coolest, that becomes the story. But it seems to hail back that way. And Brittany brought fame to her name with her poppiness, but no relation.
I don't know why, but the first thing I thought of with Spears was a trident. I don't know why that was the very first like image in my brain, was that Neptune-y looking spear.
Yeah, well,
is that even considered a spear? I guess it has 3 spears on it. Is it even 3?
I think anything that's long with a pokey end I think can technically qualify. Yeah.
Spear. I know, like it could be more simple. I obviously went fancy with it. I went full Brittany with my spear. So when in your life, did you grow up religious at all? Did you grow up around a structure that you had to break out of before you were free to kind of look into a new idea of thinking?
Yeah, totally. I was super Orthodox. I was raised Mormon in Utah. So super sheltered, super Orthodox, super faithful. And it wasn't until like about 12, 15 years, right around that same time I was having my taking that hard right, like I mentioned earlier, was when I was able to get clear of that religion as completely as you can when you've been raised in something. But yeah, I was super Orthodox, Mormon, Christian, very dedicated, the whole 9 yards. So how
Mormon, like polygamy Mormon, or just
they can. We're not. The polygamy thing's kind of
how Mormon, like you're more Mormon if you're polygamous. Like how Mormon were you? Sorry, that's so rude.
The polygamous thing is like part of the heritage, but not practiced anymore. There's offshoot groups that still practice it, and they're around. I had family members that were still part of that. My wife now, her heritage traces back to some of that polygamy stuff, and so it's definitely really present. But no, I wasn't a part of any of that growing up. But yeah, Orthodoxy would just be it's a very corporate, very structured religion, kind of owns the state of Utah, and very present in Arizona too, Phoenix area.
It's a lot more powerful politically than people would even think about. I think,
Yeah.
the Mormon religion. Like, it's snuck into a lot of little key places, and you see its rear its ugly head. It's kind of like Scientology. It's obviously been around, I mean, I guess not in the grand scheme of things. Of the grand scheme of the planet of religions, they're closer than most I study as far as their
Yeah.
creation.
Yep.
That it's interesting that I kind of, my CIA brainwashing things. There's things definitely, I think, in every religion, including Scientology, that I think are this little puzzle, and almost like the harder it is to look at that religion and delve through it, like snake through it, the more valuable that tiny piece of the puzzle is, where you like put the eye in and you're like, holy shit. It's like a koala bear. I've been staring at a koala bear the whole time, but I didn't see it because it didn't have an eyeball. Like, it's like, I sometimes think they're the valuable little pieces in there that, like, learning something like Christianity, you might have a picture of the full forest from the far back. It gives you this really grand scheme, but you might not even know a koala bear is even in that forest. Or people are like, there aren't koala bears in the forest, Chaney. They're on eucalyptus. Is that a eucalyptus
Totally.
forest? I guess it kind of.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. Is like, it's so obvious if you could step back, but it's not till that last, or that one of those pieces click into place, and you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, or the perspective or the paradigm changes in how you view it. And then you have all that fun of the world crashing down, and at the same time that your world's crashing down, you realize, oh, so it really was programming and cultish, because if it wasn't, would it be this big of a crash, right? As the pseudo reality fades away or shatters, so it's that's a really great perspective. The last piece falls in and you can actually see the picture for what it is.
What would be something beautiful about Mormonism?
Super industrious. They're really great on skill sets like reading, writing, speech. They produce and keep a very organized, very clean, borderline sterile community culture feel that way. So, I think that's part of how they've been so successful financially as an organization. I mean, billions and billions and billions. Some say they're worth more than the Catholic Church, and just super industrious, and super conservative, even as a people and as a culture. So the other thing is they're really focused on family and togetherness and inclusion. Of course, it's a double-edged sword, because if you don't fit, then it's a super harsh shunning, or you're on the outside of that then. But if you're inside the Mormon bubble, it's pretty it has all of the pretty colors, and it looks nice, and it's really it's the best hamster cage ever. It's got the wheel, it's got the tubes, it's got everything. So.
The little ball, tick, click, 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 click. All your water. You're like, this is so great.
Multiple water dispensers. Yeah. Until you leave it, you don't realize it was in a box.
Did you meet your wife now through the Mormon religion?
No, we were both on the edges of being done with the religion, and so we connected, and then had that as our background and part of our culture, but it wasn't a part of our, moving forward together. So
I would be remiss to not ask about the other big religion in Utah. Did you grow up punk rock?
No, I had a friend that was from Boise, and there was this huge subculture with punk rock, and this might age me, but it was Operation Ivy and Rancid, and I can't bounce. Anyway, I pogoed. So
That's dope. That's awesome. So you're growing up in the religion. Is it like, do you get excommunicated? Do you excommunicate yourself? How does that happen? If the shunning's involved, regardless, is your family automatically involved in the shunning?
Yeah, it's if you actually start seeing things different and you question the belief or the religion, it's not in 100% of cases, but it's pretty widespread that everyone will see you as dangerous or as lost. And when you're lost, you're under the power of, Satan, or you're misguided, and then you're dangerous because you might cause other people to lose their way. And I'm positive it's not intentional, but at that point, going to family gatherings, like people will tell you your little nieces and nephews have been told not to spend time with you. And, you start to look a little bit different because you don't have, maybe you have a pierced ear or facial hair or whatnot. And, it starts to, there's just a little bit of a divide there, and it's never quite the same. And it's interesting because they're not like, hey, I know you for who you are, and nothing will change that, which is the way I think it should be. Instead, it's like, I thought I knew you, and now you've done this type of a deal. So it's not so much a hard shun, like we won't ever speak to you, like a Scientologist thing, but it's definitely a shift takes place, and the relationships are never quite the same, and a lot of them are pretty broken. So it takes a lot of guts, and I'm tempted to say you got to be brave, but really you just have to have the guts to get over the hump to kind of stand without training wheels.
Yeah.
So.
Do you leave, and do you, like, in that relationship kind of way, do you already have a man and you're like, I already know there's this whole other energy going on. I already know there's this thing that's going to totally take care of me, so this isn't even scary? Or are you like leaping off into nothingness, and just like, I just know the thing behind me isn't real, or isn't at all, isn't the full truth?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it's the nothingness thing. It's sort of like, wait, I never crossed my mind there was anything else. For me, it was sort of like I never really fit. And so I was, there's that whole, everywhere that you thought you stood as solid ground growing up, where you based your self-esteem and identity and all of these things has to be redefined. And so there's an aspect of terror with that because it's completely unknown, and you've got this programming of, evil and hell and all the fearful things that now you're right there having to face, right? But as those things fall away, and it does take time, it's pretty severe programming. I think any high demand Orthodox religious belief is. But as it takes time, those things kind of fall away. And for me, I was lucky that just my personality and things, I've always been kind of I don't have a problem wandering off from a group and just doing my own thing. And so I just went more into the things I was always curious about that I hadn't really taken time to explore. And so that led me especially towards meditation. And I found this martial system that was kind of it's a martial art, but it's not the type that you might picture. It was actual martial system, and made by an American, and it was very meditation based. And so I was able to kind of latch onto that, but it was a little more healthy than like jumping from one, as I'm falling, flailing for a rope to hold on to. It was more like, hey, what a great fit. Just so happens this works out really well. And so I didn't have too much of a gap between, singing my hymns and saying my prayers to going and doing some meditation and starting to take it to the next level as far as self-development. And that's kind of how I framed it, as like phase 1's done, so let's phase 2 and just keep leveling up, instead of, there's grief there for loss, but I didn't really want to frame it that way. So
with meditation, did you start out with a mantra meditation, or like a transcendental idea of like emptying your head completely? Or do you think there's a difference between the two?
Yeah, there's totally a difference. There's a ton of dogma around meditation, and the ultimate thing is like Kundalini awakening or enlightenment, or there's all different terms around it depending on what your dogma is around it. But for me, it was super practical. And so it was just, if you kind of quiet down that background noise in your head, you'll be able to focus generally better. So, you'll be able to focus in life, work, everything a little bit better. So that was my first thing, is let's get this, when you try not to think about anything, all those things that pop up in your head, let's work on getting those things quiet. And so it was just a practice, and it was really straightforward and simple. It was just the thing that worked for me. And there was a couple ideas that were presented, but is to just picture like a volume knob. And whenever thoughts came up, you just acknowledge you had the thought. Not a big deal. You don't be like, don't play whack-a-mole with it, but you just turn it down and watch it fade, fade, fade until it's gone. And you just do that repeatedly until the thoughts and your subconscious kind of gets the picture that these aren't what it's supposed to be throwing up for you anymore. And eventually, over time, it becomes really quiet. And so then thinking becomes really a choice instead of involuntary. Like a lot of us have this background music going, or the jingles from when we were 14 pop into our head, that kind of stuff. But when all that stuff fades away, then you can choose what is showing up in your mind. And that was kind of my initial goal. And that was the initial practice with meditation.
Was like finding some kind of silence, like in your own thoughts or own being, because you don't even want to be in your thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, it's
but not transcendental, because I don't know. Is there a danger of not having intention in your head?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think initially it's actually more dangerous. I think that's probably the 90% of the path to becoming an NPC, is those tapes that are running in the back of your head. Suddenly they replace your free will and your actual reasoning. And pretty soon you're parroting yourself over and over without even realizing it, because when you reach into your mind to draw upon critical thought or experience, instead all you have is these tapes and these layers that have been playing. And a lot of them are rooted in things like from when you were very young. Like my family was very poor, just probably well below the poverty line, but never took any government assistance, just out of pride. And so as a family, it was, always, money was very tight. And so as a little kid, I picked up on that. So that became part of what's in my head, is this, scarcity model type thing. And so that over time unchecked, that could manifest in a lot of different ways. But with meditation, when you turn these thoughts down, as you peel off the layers, it kind of comes down. Eventually you're faced with that, and you're like, oh, well, I'll turn that down now too. So you can kind of clear out the things that are involuntary, but at the same time, the things that you're choosing or that are voluntary, you can see those clearly, or in your own without as much bias, I guess you could say. And that's when you get into things like you hear about, you mentioned transcendental, but that's when it's like, you see this rose and you never recognized it before, and you see it in this completely new way. And that's because you don't have this entire skewing from the time you were young to dislike the color red, so and does that kind of go to your point there of
a little bit, like maybe there's a lot of work to do before you're sitting there in an empty thought to allow something to just kind of poof in, like almost like the thoughts that are coming in for a reason, and dust them out one spider web at a time.
Yeah.
Kind of gig. So, in a world of slowly waking up and you're meditating and you can feel the energy move in yourself, do you first start realizing it in nature that you're attached to that too? Do you realize you're attached to other people, like empathetically? How do you realize there's like some flow from you to outside of you, that it's real?
Well, great question. Yeah, a lot of times those things that you're working to quiet down, those could almost be considered like static. So the things that are more real and more pure connection are less obscured in your head. And so a lot of people meditate and they feel like suddenly they become empathic, or suddenly they're psychic. But I view it more as, actually, now that you've cleared away the static in front of you, these things that have always been present are now more noticeable for you. And so you can really hone in on those things, whether it's perceptions or like you mentioned, connection, or kind of redefining, your own identity or how you see yourself. Interesting thing to kind of separate yourself from your roles, and who am I if I'm not, my job and my position in my family, and all these sorts of things. And the experience is actually very Jungian in a lot of ways. So
what's that mean?
Carl, or I guess Jung, I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but Freud's apprentice that kind of went south and went a different way with it. But he goes into a lot of archetypes and does a lot of deep work into identity and becoming self-aware and whatnot. And so the meditative experiences I've experienced it pairs well with that mode of thought. You kind of recognize your archetypes, recognize how your biology has designed you to fit in your family, and so on. As you add in breathing and breath work, then you can kind of start actually stirring up some of this biological energy, and that's where you get a lot of the phenomena stuff that people talk about.
What kind of phenomena?
All sorts of things.
Like what would be phenomena that may be something that you think exists in the world that people think is crazy talk?
Yeah. Like when you start doing your breath work, you've got a quiet mind. And so everything that you see is extra magnified, right? It's sort of like an empty room. You didn't know echoes, but if it's been echoing the whole time, it's empty, you can hear it. And so everything seems louder. So a phenomenon might be that you hear people's thoughts, and if you're auditory, there's reasons for that. I'm not saying it's purely, I think it's more biological than psychic or magical, but you are able to interpret people's intentions and almost hear people's thoughts. It's kind of interesting. You just sort of know things, and it's almost like people across the restaurant are having a conversation. If no one else was there and there was no ambient noise, you'd hear it clearly. That's kind of what it's like, only with everybody once you quiet your mind down. So for after a while, some people, you get this flooding effect where you are kind of overwhelmed with all of the new input that's coming in that you hadn't noticed before, that had been obscured. And then most of the phenomena that individuals talk about are things like that. So it could be, a lot of people will hallucinate, and it'll be tied back to their deities or their culture. They were raised with Indian people. They tend to see the chakra signs, and the Buddhists, they tend to see Buddha, and you know what I mean? These hallucinations will come up, and lots of phenomena like that. And then most everybody kind of goes through a funnel. Wherever your culture is, the further you go, you kind of narrow down, and then experiences start to get really similar regardless of culture. And that the closer you get down to that narrowing, the more it comes towards like this idea of Kundalini awakening. And that's kind of a universal thing. Excuse me.
What's the Kundalini?
Yeah, well, there's multiple definitions. It's kind of become a buzzword now.
It is. It's kind of like me holding space for you right now is like so
right.
Buzz, or I'm woke, or I'm red pilled or black pilled, or I'm a truther. They're all, and somewhere, isn't it so weird that somewhere in it all, if you were to say I'm a red pilled Trump QAnon truther, it is all mixed into the same conspiracy world as like NASA, flat Earth, and then something we're talking about, Kundalini.
Right.
Like we are in the craziest of times. So yeah, I won't hold you to your definition of like anyone passing a Rockefeller education test with it, but what's kind of it to you?
Yeah, well, the Kundalini, the original word, we've kind of decided that Kundalini is just, and originally I was always taught Kundalini isn't what it is, quote unquote, but it's the best word that describes that kind of biological thing that happens, right? So basically there's energetic flow within the body, and it's stunted. It kind of goes into hibernation or sleep as we when we're born. And there's all sorts of stories around why, and they differ depending on your culture and where you're coming from. But one thing everybody can agree on is that it lays dormant. And the idea is to basically connect your perineum to your crown with your energy, or your energy flow. And I know that's vague, right? But as you start doing these meditative practices, the feeling becomes very tangible, and there's different things that take place that are kind of, you can kind of guess that somebody's in the process, or you can say they're cooking, they're getting ready to boil over or whatnot. But basically, you connect your root with your crown, and you have a connection between all of those chakras or energy centers or emotions, or however you want to define them. And the process is actually more biological than it is supernatural. And there's some pretty neat things that happen when you actually do open. It's there's a little bit of a price to pay, like it's a little bit traumatic, but like one of the members of our community, he is a strongman, one of these guys that bends metal and lifts heavy weights and does these feats of strength, right? And he's actually, I think he's one of the head dudes. There's a whole world that's that strongman world, and he's one of the head dudes. But he actually wrote an article that when he opened Kundalini, he saw jumps in his strength that he can't explain. And so depending on who you are, your personality, and how you're put together, different things get magnified and kind of reinforced. Magnified is actually a really good word. It kind of makes it more, so to speak. So how's that for a vague almost answer?
That's pretty good. For even myself, even the words you said, magnetized, for some reason, I feel like in my own, and by no means do I feel enlightened, or do I feel like I'm, whatever the word is, of like hitting some precipice of getting it. But I do think magnetized, because I felt like metal, like precious metal, all of a sudden, as it just became in my head, all I could think about, like it was just all my research, it was just very metal oriented. And it's funny, as I've gone through it, even in the past few days, because it's gotten so, faster, even putting the words of, I felt like it started on the outside of my skin and then kind of worked its way through. I remember specifically when it was in my rib cage, like if I were to think about it, I remember specifically, and I feel like that was when like my whole empathy was opening up, where I was like, holy shit, even having ideas where, like you're saying, of just very connected to, and people didn't even have to speak. I felt like I could walk into a room and just like I was a magnet. Like, holy hell. I felt like I had to start wearing glasses to not stare at people in the eyes. I felt very like, I felt myself so much. I felt like everybody's going to fall in love with me, like almost egoic in a way. It is, as it goes through, and I'm learning to balance, because it's like as each one of my chakras kind of pops and gets stronger and stronger, it was a fucking lot at first. I felt like I was losing my whole entire mind, because I had lived so long in my head and throat that everything else was just like almost like a thermometer popping. Like, here's all this other information. Try to logic yourself out of this, asshole. And it now feels kind of like a cold iron rod. And it doesn't feel like a serpent flowing through me, as when you were saying to think about it, it feels like a rod through me. Like I can, no matter what I think about, I can feel it. I can feel the energy in me. And so I guess maybe a snake crawling around the rod. I get that. I get that picture, even just saying it right now. Like there's energy flowing, but my core self, like my soul and spirit and connection and calm, that's like getting sturdier, for the energy to stay kind of twined around me so I can use it better and not have it manipulated by everything else. Maybe. I don't know if
totally. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome
This is
description.
the last 48 hours. I really just verbalized
Really?
this to, yeah, I verbalized this to a friend. Like, this is the text I sent somebody before I got on air.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a super great expression of the experience. Like just what you said is, and there used to be a very dogmatic way that everybody felt they had to experience it. And, over the last 30 years, the art that, or the people I've been kind of connected with, they've been specifically working to try to help people through a Kundalini awakening or this experience, right? And 30 years ago, it was quite traumatic. Like we're talking schizophrenic tendencies. There had to be a lot of safeguards in place, or people would have things that mimicked mental order and psychotic breaks and whatnot. And that was what originally sparked the desire to help people. Is there was a lot of people that were becoming damaged, and medication had no effect because it wasn't something that was being caused by a chemical imbalance. And over these years, like you mentioned, things speeding up. And I think a lot of us feel kind of the difference between even just 10 years ago, just in how the world feels. But people are opening without as much trauma. They're connecting without as many ill effects and whatnot. And what do you know? This word Kundalini has become literally mainstream, where before it was only talked about in Christian circles as a form of demonic possession, but now it's just sort of become part of the vernacular. But what you described, and what the interesting side note, how you said you picture it as like a literal rod or column, something that's very metal and very solid inside you is how you feel. When we stopped introducing the ideas of what would happen in a concrete form, people began having their own experiences, and they stopped seeing what we planted in their head as they went through their process. And that's something that I think was kind of a breakthrough. At least that kind of blew my mind, because it showed that it will, in order for us to progress as people or evolve or whatever you want to call it, our bodies or our biology will use whatever we give it, it'll make use of whatever we have. So, if your dogma is this way, it'll use that and you'll have your experience. But if you don't put dogma in there, you'll still have your experience. And so that's why people can have these great experiences without being, vegan or doing these 100-day, intense fasting rituals and all these things that used to be what was, quote unquote required. Now it's just without the dogma, people are just free to kind of become themselves. It's really it's pretty neat. And it was rare until literally 6-7 years ago. It's extremely rare to have people open without a ton of dogma all around them, and a ton of expectation of what was supposed to be seen and what process was supposed to be gone through as they went along and whatnot. So it's really neat hearing your experience that way. It's kind of cool too to hear you just openly say, I don't get the snake thing, because in one culture, I think it's the Indian, but I think Chinese has an aspect of this too. They see the chakras as water wheels, and so the energy had to move between them like a snake would slither. And I think, as far as I can tell, that's where that snake origin came from. Of course, us Christians are like serpent, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's so interesting how everything, that snake representation, though, is through so much, every culture. It's in everything, and it goes all the way. I mean, before there was Christianity, right? There was the snake representation. Wasn't, I mean, maybe before Egypt, I don't know. But I'm sure it's all through everything. I mean, because even all the old pyramids, it has it down the side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just think about, even without the esoteric thoughts or the self-knowledge, snakes would have been of all the animals in the world, snakes, imagine what that would appear. If you saw a snake for the first time without any background, that would be one of the 7 wonders of the world, this thing with no legs that moves as quickly as a mammal. It's smart. It's, all these things. I could just imagine the impression that would make, generally speaking.
Go into the ground, go up a tree.
Yeah, like
go in the water.
You're never safe. It's slithering towards you. How does it cross the sand? How does it go where it goes? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty mystical.
Totally.
And I mean, even in India, they still like charm it with the, with the music. Is that real? Is it charmed by music, or is it just charmed by the tip of the flute?
Yeah, I think at one time it was more of an actual art, and there was movement involved, and I think you can have a snake kind of in a calm state. I know that now there's a lot of kind of trickery, sort of like magician show type stuff that goes on. They'll sometimes they'll sew the snake's mouth shut. It's a little bit taboo, but originally I think there was something to taking advantage of the snake's sensory system. So you know how they went above their head, where that's a little tougher for them to get their heat signature. And then they, use the movement, and the snake would sway trying to get that heat signature. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about it, but
ooh, the heat signature. So if I'm blowing through a flute, my warm breath is coming through it. So the snake's trying to follow the warmth. Especially if it's in a cold clay jar that it's sitting there, then it's desperate for the warmth when it's searching. It's coming out of a dark hole, like searching for this warm breath of air.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
I don't know.
Like looking through a smoke screen, right? Looking through the fog.
What kind of so you're meditating, you're back, you left the Mormon church, you're meditating all the time. What kind of do you start doing fasts? Do you take psychedelics? Do you start buying crystals? What's kind of your path next? Or do you have an experience like you're like, oh shit, I'm psychic? Or I don't know. I don't want to guess, but
no, the meditation was a part of the martial art, and it's a really brutal martial art with a ton of like hand-to-hand stuff and a lot of combat and getting tossed around and learn how to take punches and doing knife work. And it's a really it's designed to be a really tactical, real world type of a thing. So broken fingers, broken noses, cuts and bruises, and the forms and the breath work in the fight, and then the fighting and the combat situations that we learned, the techniques corresponded with opening aspects of the chakra system and increased your energy as you went up. So you started in all earth movements and learned this earth breath work, and then you did all of your fighting through this earth breath work. Then you moved up to water, the chakras on the way up until you hit the void. And as you work through these chakras and learning this literally through combat, each one has its emotion that you're dealing with. So dealing with fear, dealing with compassion, dealing with feeling grounded and safe and whatnot. And so that's how I worked through it. And as you're doing these fight scenarios, or, we'd have to go to like a boxing gym. I had a background in boxing anyway, but we'd go to the boxing gym and fight a bunch of boxers. And then we'd go to, a Taekwondo guy or Aikido guys and learn a little bit about wind, where they're all up on their toes and flitting around. And so we would tangle with them, and they had different things to show us. But as you're going through these different movements, these different ideas and different breath work, your focus is on that chakra or on that area, and different things and emotions will come out. So it's really quite a process. It's pretty fascinating to, I saw one of our training partners, he was working on his fire center. He had a block, he couldn't get it open. One of the guys that's in charge just came up and just went straight through his defense and just punched him like right in the solar plexus and just dropped him to his knees, and he kind of hit the ground and just started sobbing. And the guy picked him up and said, "You need to have that open." Sorry. He drug him over to the side. And the guy just cried for like an hour, and he's like a tough, truck driver guy. And he was a changed person after that. So it was literally a process of opening through
That would be like your MMA fighter name, Shadow Worker, and you like.
That's right. Yeah. So that's how it went for me. So it was it was a little more, earthy, hands-on, fight or flight. It works or it doesn't. If it's effective, you don't get hit. If it's not effective, you do get hit. And whatnot. So
that's really interesting. Like if the universe says this is fixed, you won't get hit right now.
Yeah.
Maybe not that simple, but
it's pretty close. Yeah,
because I guess you're probably going through it levels with people together, like that. What is it? Iron sharpens iron. That
yeah. There's different. Students are different levels, but you could be working all in earth or in the red base chakra, and so you'd have different months you'd spend on different chakras, and we aligned it with the seasons because different seasons are more conducive to different mentalities and whatnot. And so in the spring we'd be working on this, and the fall we'd be working on that, and it was pretty great. When you really get in the zone, your breathing becomes something that's automatic instead of something you have to consciously decide to do. Your body moves completely differently than if it was, a different mentality of breathing. So, moving in a windy, compassionate way, your body moves completely differently than in an earthy, powerful way. It's like a rhino versus a peacock. It's one of those things you kind of have to see or experience to really understand. But it's pretty fascinating. I was just really enjoyed being a student and experiencing it all. As with where I was in my life too, I was very committed to diving in full bore. So where other people looked at it as a once or twice a week thing, I was like, trying to find a Mr. Miyagi so I could be Daniel type deal. So we put a lot into it.
How long did you practice at this school for?
Still practicing. So it's been.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's like something you can't perfect. It's going to be a forever.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Keep working on everything. Yeah.
Do you need other people for your chakras to open?
No, it's helpful, but no, you don't need other people. The guy that was one of my main instructors, he actually did a bunch of work, and then he was one of these fiery, sort of impatient guys, and so he was forcing everything. And he actually opened in a drum circle with just a bunch of hippies out there doing their thing, and he just literally kind of started seizuring out of nowhere. And then there were people there that could kind of help him through it, but he lost feeling in his left arm and his pinky, and it like singed him up, and he kind of took some damage and learned the hard way. But he was surrounded by people and the rhythm of the drums, and I think at that time he was a little more straight edge, so I don't think he was like even smoking anything, or I think it was just a purely like biological thing. And then for me, I was trying to be all zen, so I was underneath this old cedar tree and trying to like see my ancestors, and then you get this wave of panic, and I'm like, oh shit, it's happening. After a couple of years of work, and just this massive like rolling, ripping, you hear audible sounds in your ears, like this. For me, it was like this rushing water, and I was looking around to see if the wind was blowing the trees, and it's a really wild experience. But there was no wind, so my hearing's going crazy, everything, and you feel this popping up my back, and my body starts like moving without my permission, and boom, like you just hear this pop. I just sat there and just meditated under the tree and tried to do my balancing exercises and have it be regulated, and I didn't feel like I took any damage. But when I opened my eyes, like literally the world had changed. The closest thing I can describe is, have you seen that? I think it's Bradley Cooper, Limitless, I think it is, where he takes a pill and it changes his ability, which you can see. And like he takes this pill and it makes him operate as like a genius. And when it does that, the filter on the screen changes and everything's brighter and lighter, more detail. And that's the closest thing I've seen to what my Kundalini experience was. But I spent like a couple weeks literally just walking around and looking at everything, seeing it again for like the first time. It was pretty wild. So
you look a little wide-eyed and kind of manic. It's weird to me with my experience how much of it is on film because of different shows that I was happening to doing podcasts at the time. And I actually think back to just getting back from DC and doing Rogueways with Lindsay. And I knew I needed kid gloves because I was kind of I was almost there. Like whatever it was like, I was everything was vibrating inside me. And it was just like, I wasn't sleeping at all. It was like every thought was a spider web. I could see things in like a way that my brain was connecting everything I'd ever learned before. And plus I had all these emotions, and plus I could just talk to someone and hear one sentence and then almost too much, almost to the point where like at some points I felt the surge of almost supernatural abilities that I was not ready for. I was like just chilling in my normal everyday life. And so I look back at that video of me on there and just like I hadn't slept. I literally had felt like I had faced my own mortality and then I was on air and I just look pale as a ghost and just through it. And my ego, the weird part is it was like so much shoving down of even saying like, I think I have this power, or I think I have this, or something's going on. Like I didn't even know how to approach anyone with it. It was just kind of like I felt like I was riding psychosis.
Totally.
It was so insane, but I liked it. I know it seemed so crazy and it was traumatic at times, and I was kind of weepy at times and felt like I wanted to just peel my skin off at times, but it was just this like you're saying, limitless in a way. It was a new drug and it didn't matter how harsh it was. It was so new that it was just like the sky was bigger than it's ever been. Look at that bird. It's so weird. I'm like, I just have to drive over the ocean. Every sunset matters. No, let me walk back and pick up that piece of trash. Because even the like little tiny intentions started to matter where like, I don't care about littering. Yes, you do, because you just thought about that piece of trash. Why are you even having this convo? Just pick it up. You're part of the divine order of things. Like, do it.
Yep.
And then also with people a little bit, where my old self was like, fuck that person. But somewhere my new self was like, no, not fuck that person. Like I could feel them and see them, and I knew about them when they were a little kid. Like it was like, no, I had to be a lot kinder to them. And it was really hard to go through my human ego of like, they're not allowed to speak to you like that.
Oh, that's such a great description. Isn't it wild, the things like literally real time unwinding? Like as you're having your normal thought process with a person, and then it's literally getting unwound right while you're there, like in that split second, and you in that moment see the person differently, have this increased capacity for empathy because you know that they were, had trauma as a child, and you love them at the same time. You totally don't want to be near them, and like it's your reality is still there, but your perspective is so different. Anyway, it's what a great description.
I feel like it was like a new responsibility I had to learn. And I know it's like for me, I don't know why it sounds like the silliest phrase. It sounds like the silliest thing to say, but whatever. If we were fallen angels or demigods or figured out that, like, oh my gosh, Jesus Christ is real, the whole story, and there's missing parts or whatever the energy, like if all the books were burnt tomorrow, I would just have this feeling of like the same way to pick up. I don't know. I just have this responsibility that I cannot fuck the humans over. Like this hella responsibility. Like I have to play it different than whoever was like, who's ever passing me the baton. Like there's something that went wrong somewhere and I have to just be a little better than the Chaney before me.
Oh, got chills. That's so spot on, and it's so unjaded. Like there's not all this ego tied up in I have achieved. This perspective. Instead, it's like this wonder. Christmas morning type. Wow, look at all this stuff, and look at all the implications of all the stuff now. Right? That's really great. I've heard it described this way, and tell me if this reads for you, because it may not. But that when you become connected or open, or you have that experience of, I call it primal energy, right? Because it kind of transcends dogma. It's something everybody who's human has, right? Or at least the potential. You become this center to help other people center. And it's not like a egotistical, like I want to help you. It's more of, I'm really hyper aware of imbalance now. And I feel this sort of need to help balance things around me. So does that read at all? Does that come through, or is it's different for you?
No, I feel that. And then sometimes I can feel different of my chakras get triggered from my head to my root, like all the way through. Sometimes it's my heart aches for people. Sometimes my stomach hurts for them. Sometimes, you're like, oh, am I horny right now for this person? And then you're like, oh, it's like this constant pinging of all and I don't even know if 7 is the right number. I've heard so many different numbers for how many. I just think of it almost like like an infinite amount of pings going off all the time, and maybe the whole goal is to light up the whole thing, that it just stays lit. Like I like it better as a solid thing than 7 or 12 little gems or a snake crawling between those gems. I like I want to be solid.
Yeah.
I want to be solid for someone like 70s, like disco era. Like you're solid, and I'm like, thanks, that matters. I don't even know what my point was of it. But yeah, the facilitation, it feels like a responsibility to me. And for some reason, that responsibility feels like I have faith in something for the first time in my life. Like out of all the time of sitting in church next to my parents, or it makes me feel that responsibility is what makes me feel attached to the whole and attached to you or a stranger or a butterfly or, a sunset. I guess.
Totally. No, that's a really great, kind of a really beautiful description of kind of your process, or what you're feeling and how you interpret that. It's great. Yeah. I kind of feel that too, with a responsibility, almost like you're kind of higher up on the hill, but it's not like you're above somebody. It's just you've sort of been through that shit right there. And so when you see other people, you can't help but want to like put a flag out or be like, avoid this rock pile or this thing. And it's interesting because it's skewed, because it's very self-serving to help people. At least in my background with Christianity, it was like, look how righteous I'm being, and look at the things I'm doing for others, versus this natural feeling of responsibility to care for one another. Even and everything in the world is one another now, not just people, but everything. So yeah, but you kind of sense this presence of this life in all sorts of inanimate objects. At least I do. So I treat my car nicely. I appreciate the doors that close on my house. I really glad for my clothing. Sometimes my belt is doing double time, after a large meal. And I appreciate that, so it sounds corny, but it's actually that's kind of how it is for me. So I hear you with the responsibility thing.
Even you saying that, and I think of my belt, and then I think it's a piece of leather from some animal, a piece of leather from some animal that was fed by some piece of earth, by some human hands, that then in turn that it was sold to feed a family, the money that came from that thing. And it's just like the macro of it all, to really be great. Like this item of clothing, like where did this fabric come from? And then I would even, saying that makes me think of the alchemy, even just instinctively how important it is for me. I don't like mixed fabrics on myself. It's like I need 100% things. Like my skin, like a computer, needs to read what the fabric is and know how to breathe through it. Otherwise, my palms will sweat and my feet will sweat. My armpits feel weird. I might get a migraine. Totally. And so even that being grateful, even maybe being that much more present and putting your armor on, like what you're wearing, why you're wearing it. It's like kind of the Ouroboros of that even small, tiny scale of getting dressed in the morning.
Yeah. Meanwhile, everybody else is just trying to get to work on time. And we're like, my clothes, having this deeper understanding of, or not, I guess it's not even a deeper understanding. It's just for my own perception or your own perception of what this is. It's more than what it used to be. It's not just a shirt I'm putting on, or it's not just the time I'm saying goodbye to my kids before they go off to school. It's become more than that. It's you have this sort of an understanding of how it matters more than just the thing itself right there, right now. It's connection forward and backwards with everything that we do. So yeah, it becomes, at first it was pretty overwhelming. It sounds like you experienced some of that too, where it's almost like the floodgates are open and you're trying not to get washed away with.
What kind of, did you experience like any kind of abilities? Did you become clairvoyant? Did you shoot powers out of your fingertips? Did you have anything like this run through you and subside? Or did you have anything like this run through you and stay?
Yeah, totally. It's all been permanent with this. I'll tell you some interesting ones. I went out to my car in the morning, and you know how, well, you probably don't know because you live in paradise, but in other places it freezes. And there was some ice on the door, and you have that little minute where the door kind of sticks a little bit before you have to carefully open it. But I ripped my car door handle off like effortlessly, just tore literally a big old hole in my car door.
You're like the Incredible Hulk standing there with your handle in your hand.
Yeah, but there wasn't bulging muscles. There was just a shocked look on my face, like, what did I just do? And then there was another time I was trying to get into a shed, and there was a padlock on it that was screwed into this wood, 2x4, and it was all locked up. But I needed to get in to fix the water heater. And I grabbed the padlock and I just kind of said, well, this just needs to move. And I literally pulled the padlock from what it was attached to, and pulled all of the metal with the padlock out of the wall. It's just stripped the screws and everything. And it wasn't like I was grunting and like straining. I just literally did it. And there's this, after it happens, there's this moment of like, what just happened? And then and then there's this, it must have been rotten wood. You try to explain it away, but there's really no way. And then the other one that stands out is I was a single dad. So I was taking care of my boys, and I'm late for work, and I had to run, and so they'd forgotten something. It's a 4th grade building. And I run up to the door, and I pull the door open, and I hear this loud ping when I pull it open. And I thought it was weird, but I go in and I drop the thing off to the lady, and she says, well, how did you get in? I said, oh, the door was open. She's all, well, it should have been locked. And I went back, and it had torn that steel pins out of the door from just trying to open it, And so, I mean, if you told me now, like, oh, yeah, we'll do it now, or, do it on demand or whatnot, maybe I could, I don't know. But there's just those are some examples of things that I don't know. I would say that's pretty far outside the normal ranges of what's most people could do,
When I
or what
was
I could do.
young
Yeah.
with friends of mine, just doing light as a feather, stiff as a board type stuff, we kind of got really good at it. And to a way, like we were doing it when we were a little older than we should have been, like 17, 18, 19. And
Yeah.
it was kind of more of a party trick to us. But it was that exact same that because it was such a party trick and we just expected it to work, it did every time, to the point that it, like, we didn't have phones back then and we didn't videotape everything. But it was a little ritualistic when I think back to it. And I think all the people that were involved in it, I won't out them by name, even though I know you're little witches and you do too. I'm just kidding. I won't put titles on anyone. But it got to me, even looking back at it, it would have been supernatural, like how good we got at it with what we could lift up with our fingertips.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre I mean, it's not bizarre, but in the 3D normie world of here's the religions you're allowed to look at, and here's the school of thought you go to, it's totally outside the box.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is there's a ton of bleed over, almost kind of like the Matrix movie portrays, where you start to see past the Matrix, and then within it you have abilities or whatnot. There's a lot of bleed over in realities. It feels like. And so yeah, things that you can know, moving to the right and then something lands where you were, it's not that you're being precognizant, you're just sort of, it's become part of your regular five senses now, and so you just behave as though it's normal. But then it dawns on, occasionally dawns on me, like, I don't think that was normal. I don't think that's what other people would consider that normal. What just happened. But yeah, it really changes things. I'll tell you, the biggest change for me was I used to be one of these guys that had almost a photographic memory, and I could log conversations and literally type them almost word for word, like weeks or months later. And after the experience, primal energy, Kundalini, whatever this experience is, all of my short-term stuff that didn't matter really, it was neat to have, but trivial pursuit stuff disappeared. So it's like my mental filing cabinet got reshuffled. And so I literally am having to go through the world with what felt like handicapped, because I used to, conversation was the easiest thing in the world because I could draw on literally a bank of information, recall movie lines and recall, any of this stuff to fit with, who I was working with. And that was all gone like overnight. And so that was a really interesting thing. It kind of led to realizing that those things are probably more superficial than I'd realized. And it was like having a collection of pretty rocks that I would show everybody versus actually being a meaningful tool for communication. So that's how I've made peace with not having access to those things anymore.
It's interesting how far away some of the stuff that used to be, and probably a lot of people that really loved me in my life, that they'd be like, oh, I loved hanging out with Chaney, or I'd be their phone a friend if they were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, for this whole sect of pop culture that's so far away from my filing system now. It's hard for me. I can plug into it and kind of go on this stream of thought, like almost like I'm running on a treadmill now, but it's so far off. I actually have to shut my eyes to find it, where it used to be like my go-to party tricks was talking about Tom Hanks and how he's a pedophile. But now it's like, I'm like, I know I used to know everything about Forrest Gump and every symbolism in that movie. And now all I can think of is like something in the soundtrack, like it's like
Right.
so far back. But silence is more important. Items, I'm letting myself instinctively be drawn to, I know people are crystals and stones, and I'm trying to do all the right stuff by those things and surround myself with those things and even get them for other people. But I'm just digging metals. I like having
Yeah,
metals on me. I like, they matter to me more, especially silver. I'm finding is my fave, uh, everywhere. I like the conductivity of it, and it seems to be very important throughout all of history, and I like that.
totally. Good for you. Good for you for going with it. Um, it's interesting that, and I think a lot of people consider an experience like that shifts everything, quote unquote, enlightenment, as though it's an event, right? Like, boom, I guess I'm enlightened, right? And I could understand how things look differently enough and seem differently enough that, yeah, but I like that you're like, I'm just really into metal. I know that a lot of people are into crystals. And it's great that you don't have this dogmatic feel of what you have to be into. You can just trust your gut and follow your intuition, which I know originally, and I think even still today, a lot of people, it's kind of like there's a group think around what you're supposed to be like after you're quote unquote enlightened or whatnot. So I think that the whole process is about individuals becoming even more individual and playing their individual parts and everything. You know,
Me
one other
too.
thing that, yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. Go on. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. I was just gonna say one other thing that comes to mind I almost forgot about till just now is when this happened, I was like Mr. Salesman, like fancy watch, fancy car, fancy suits. And after the experience, none of it meant anything. Like I couldn't get into it at all. Like it didn't seem dumb. It just literally lost its meaning. And so that was another fascinating thing to have, this closet full of all this, expensive stuff and, drawers full of, these sunglasses. I was in that kind of higher end sales world and was playing that part, and none of it meant anything anymore. And then to go out into the world and be around people who are covered in that stuff and just look at them and see how none of it meant, like it meant nothing. It was really that was really a trip. And that was a hard shift, where you get a little bit of whiplash going from
I know
second to third.
I've been calling it killing my gods, and I've realized during this whole process for me, and I know esoteric stuff. I picture certain people in my audience, and for some reason, my Christian friends get the most nervous about any of this kind of talk, any of this kind of like they feel like they're, and you know what? I feel like they're feeling like their Bible says something by what they're assuming without reading it. Like it's
Totally.
like so much about I guess like a magical school of thinking right now, or even energies, or I think that it's uh it's all in there. They just have to chariot of fire certain terms so that we understand them. That it's the exact same way I look at the simulation. It's like, how do I explain manifestation to a monkey? Well, if a monkey knows about a computer, then I tell them that the computer, see how this works? I can only explain to you with the magic you have the ability to grasp. So, our highest kind of form of magic in the 3D is that look at us talking to each other on these magical black mirrors, like crystal balls from my leper cave to your leper cave. And I know, like, we're just waiting for the 300 to show up and like levitate a virgin for some answers on, like, okay, I guess we can take our masks off.
Totally.
I know I don't want to skip over anything. I kind of lost my train of thought. So if you have anything to add on to that, feel free.
Oh no, I would just say that ties into the idea that I think this process uses whatever is available. So just like you were saying, if 3D is all that's available, or I've seen people have a really negative, like be involved with grief or with a lot of anger. And then they go through an experience and it just uses whatever's there. So you can go through a Kundalini or an awakening experience and have it be really negative if that's what the tools, if that's what you're giving it to use, or the process to use, it will use it. So that came to mind with what you were saying there.
Did kind of separate maybe, another thing that we've talked about in our kind of friendship of recent is like sigil magic. Where does that kind of idea come into play of this? Do you learn it before, after, or are you just in some place and you're like, wow, there's energy in everything? So the intentions of, building a house or building a symbol, it's all alchemy. And so you start working with this.
Yeah, no, that's a great description. For me, the magical aspects came after. I remember after I had this experience, I contacted one of the the top dudes that I knew in our group, and I just said, I feel like I've been given this like a high-powered sniper rifle, but I don't know how to do anything with it. It's like, so I've got these abilities now. I've got this potential now. I mean, how do I put this together? Like, how do I measure, how do I even use this? And he said, he kind of started me on this process of, kind of how to bring these things into a place where you can start to order them and then use them and, see what works and what doesn't and whatnot. And the magical aspect came as part of that, because it was described to me, and this is how I've come to see it, is in the same way in the past I used prayer. And I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but the way I see it is, as a martyr, I was begging God to somehow please end my suffering. And that's what prayer was, is please, 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 can I? It was this constant begging, right? And then I'll be really righteous and then beg some more, and maybe you'll grant it, or it'll be granted. And in that same way, the magic became a mode of accessing that same sort of source, or that same sort of energy, to manifest what I wanted. But the begging aspect was gone and the conditional aspect was gone. And so in my physical body and everything, these forms or these sigils, they make sense to me. How I make them, and then how I, charge a sigil.
Before I go any further, what is a sigil?
Okay, yeah. Well, a sigil is it ends up being just kind of a design, or a conglomerate of, it could be letters or just symbols or triangles or circles. Sometimes they look really pretty. Sometimes they just look like chicken scratch, but they represent a thought or an affirmation or a statement or an idea. And they can be used to bring that thought into the physical, or, to cast that sigil, and kind of use magic to bring that from out there into the ether into here, the physical. And so the actual construction of the sigil is our physical 3D part. The charging, or the idea of the intention behind the statement or the affirmation or the thought, that's the spiritual thought, the spiritual part. And then by fusing those things together, we bring that spiritual into the physical and influence the world in that way.
It's kind of funny that you said fuse, because when I thought of the first sigil I kind of made, I thought of laying almost a fuse down, and then my meditation on it, lighting the fuse up. So the same way it'd run down like a cartoon dynamite stick,
Totally.
like that. It was just like infinite, because I wanted every line to attach. And I also, a weird thing about it was just being able to memorize my own sigil with my eyes shut, and how much intention that took to memorize the sigil with your eyes shut. But once you memorize it, it is there forever. And it's pretty bizarre, the amount of symbols now. I mean, I always knew all the symbols of all the studies that I've been learning about all this time. But now I have my own symbol that I know I've created, and I could draw it the same as a peace sign now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild.
It is
It's like
crazy.
that fuse visualization. What a great idea. What a great way to charge a sigil. That's a good one. I hadn't heard that one before. That's really good.
They're from your words. I just listened to your audio and then that's just what I saw. I do tend to listen to things auditorily with my eyes shut a lot when I need to like them to sit somewhere different. And like somewhere even doing this in the edit later, which is probably why I'm always late. I getting the show up already is because I have to sit in it differently, like separate myself from it and then sit in it to I don't know, feel it differently, feel it from outside myself. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting alchemy that I'm trying to be responsible for in myself and even with other people that I think is just kind of, oh yeah, another podcast, just shit about. And maybe there's a ton of those out there, but I don't think any exchange of words between other humans, I think it should have that same kind of care. And I want to try to give it to this. And so if this is something now that we're saying and recording and it's being almost imprinted like a sigil, that it's going to go out there and might be out there somewhere way after we're here, I want to be as responsible with that, like a fallen angel. I don't want to fuck the humans.
Right.
Like it's all back to it again. And I don't think I'm better than them. I just, if I think if everybody kind of lived that way, if you are a chosen one from God, meant to bring humanity to a better kind, whatever religion you pick your God, give him that name, and you're the one picked to do that thing, take some fucking responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that could only help things for each of us if we literally took ourselves that seriously, not in a pressure sort of way, but in a, I actually matter and what I'm doing matters. Like it literally echoing through worlds and eternities matters. I mean, life, we're living it. It matters. It's really funny. I was thinking today, I was picking up lunch for my wife, and I always try to connect with people because I felt really unseen most of my life. People saw, saw a facade and then projected onto the facade. And so I always try to be as genuine as I can, and and pass on at least a little bit of something good in every interaction I have. And I was with the cashier and she just wasn't available for connect, right? And I just thought, when did we decide as a society that the person behind the register doesn't matter? Like at what point did standing behind the register make it so that I literally don't have to think or care about you as a person at all? Like, you know what I mean? And it kind of struck me today, like, wow, like, and then you wonder, is it silly am I out of line thinking that anybody would want to connect? I'm just at the register getting my paycheck. It's just it's interesting perspective. I mean, who decided that little connection doesn't matter? That time that we have right there for that minute. Since when did that become nothing?
I always, after my dad died, like the day my dad died, I don't know what I had to do, but I had to go to the grocery store for the most monotonous, like ridiculous, like toilet paper or coffee or something so ridiculous. And I remember walking through the grocery store with like the nummiest numb feeling of like, just like almost, I put a video on my Instagram of CERN, like if they opened a dime-sized black hole, kind of what physical representation would be of the planet if that happened. That's how I think humans are in depression. Like, it's all our jobs to make sure we shut the dime-sized black hole and everybody else, because it could take over all of us. I don't know how strong everyone is. I think I'm a powerful bitch. So you guys don't want to see me as a black hole. You want me to be a supernova. Otherwise, you're all fucked. I'm going to CERN this bitch. Sorry. Like, it's good if we just all keep me happy. But I think that for everybody else too, like, we're all just these little black holes walking around.
Yeah.
I totally lost my train of thought. Actually, the visual of it was so like, it's just so encompassing. Yeah, I totally forgot what I was going to say, but I'm trying to, oh yeah, my dad died. So I'm walking through the store and I just have to run this monotonous chore. And I'm like, my ego is, I'm like, my dad died. I can't believe you guys are in the way. I can't believe you guys are just walking through, enjoying your sunshine and your public subs. And my dad died. And I was just so like, everything was about me, all the energy, like everybody pay attention to me. And, you know, no one did. You just walk through, you're in your invisible little shell and you get back into life. For some reason, however many years, that moment has just been one of those searing moments that even during this mask thing where I'm like, I just want to cry and crumple up in my car because I'm not going to wear a mask in the store. So it's always like, here goes. And then I don't want to bring the energy on myself. And it's like this whole battle of just like float through, you're invisible, or then you don't want to be invisible because you want your smile to matter. And so I just like, what if their dad died? Like, who cares about the mask? Who cares about anything else? And so that day, for me, I always try to treat everybody else like they're in that day. So like you're saying with the cashier, I also had to work during that time. I also had to like do other responsible stuff of life. And so those little 30-second intervals of just being like, hey, like eye contact. Hey, smile. Hey, like my ears move a little up on my face and you can see it because all my jaw just, you know, moved differently. It really matters. And I think it matters now in 2020, 2021, where we've all just been through like the biggest psyop in human history. I mean, never before have they ever taken us as little naked apes away from each other like this before. And really, more important than your freedom to travel, more important than your freedom to see anything or watch a baseball game, they took you away from your other little energy portals that we have relied on each other since our conception. And I feel like that's why we all feel this. But maybe the black hole of missing each other is why we're also having these awakenings. It's forcing us to.
Yeah, I have to think everything falls into a system of creating balance, kind of the same way that when a pendulum swings, it's in the process of returning to center, regardless of how wildly it's out in left field, right? And so that's how I've kind of framed the events of late, which is just, it's like, you know, 9/11 was bad enough, but now this is just, you know, it's pretty intense. But I have to think it has to work in like a pendulum. It's part of the process of kind of bringing people into a balance point. And if there is any one thing that I could say was positive, it's that business as usual was interrupted. And there were a lot of people that would have never had a reason to look up from their lunch that looked up from their lunch. And out of all those people, some of them haven't looked back. Some of them are still like, I never noticed that before. They're still, their head's still up and they're kind of able to ask questions at least. And I don't know that any other time in history, you know, in days gone by where we're too busy just trying to like make enough, you know, produce enough food to make it through the winter and not like fucking die as a family, or we're, you know, life was just brutal for so much of time. But here in this time, I mean, back then, I don't even know if you had the strength to look up and care because you were so busy just making ends meet. But 2020 was a time where everybody looked up. I mean, not everybody saw, not everybody kept looking, but I don't know if there's ever been a point in history where that many people said, what the fuck, you know, or at least changed their viewpoint for even an instant. So that's one bit of positive I could draw out of the whole thing, I guess.
So, there's sigil magic, which is like symbols. Is there, like, what would be, could I put intention or a spirit or a ghost or a demon? I mean, I don't know what these energy, and is there dense energy and here's a whole loaded question. Is there evil energy on this realm? Does that evil energy need to be there? Can it be expelled? And if so, can other people be possessed by that energy, or can items be possessed by that energy?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think there's energy, and then there's how we need to see it. So whatever you want to project onto it, go ahead and project. So some people need to see the light and the good and feel all of that comes with it. Some people need to see the dark and the bad and feel all that comes with it. But kind of like a fork, you know, it's just a fork, you know, it doesn't make you fat, but it's how you use it, I guess, or, you know, kind of what you put onto it. But yeah, as far as like entities and whatnot, I'm not sure exactly how they come into being. But I know that if there's enough thought form around it, they get pretty reinforced and can become quite potent and quite physical and quite literal. Like I've seen entities cast shadows before in a room, and that's pretty dense, right? So I think it takes more for them to actually block light and cast a shadow than it does to, like, you know, do the poltergeist shit and throw things across the room. But yeah, as far as like using the energy of an entity to charge an item or to empower an item, absolutely possible, you know. As far as putting an entity into an item, yeah, that's possible too. I've never tried that, but that was a common legend with swords. I know, and especially in old feudal Japan, where the swords themselves became living with the, you know, I don't know if you would say it was an entity or if it was just, you know, so many people had died by this sword, and that energy became encased in the idea of the guy that was killing people with it, and that became part of that sword. But yeah, as far as in the same way that everything has an energy to it and has a life, then yes, we can take energy that's external and put it into different things in the same way we would, you know, light the fuse and charge the sigil. That'd be my take.
Would that be that would be magic, or what people consider magic? You're playing with energy and
sure. Yeah, magic, I think, is honestly, I think prayer is magic that's acceptable. You know, it's just our way of interacting with the non-physical from our physical state. So yeah, as far as magic goes, and like, you know, sorcery or conjuring, or, you know, calling in entities that are, you know, from not this physical realm, and not all that much different than calling in physical people. It's just you have a little bit different process to access things that aren't as easily right here 3D with us, you know, tangible, physical.
Could you mess with stuff you're not ready to mess with, and be playing with things and kind of open yourself up to stuff that sits on you maybe past your lifetime?
Yeah, I think you could. I think you'd have to be, it's sort of like having enough rope to hang yourself. Like most people that are casual, or, you know, just playing with a Ouija board for the first time and that sort of thing, I think mostly their fear creates a response that actually takes shape, and now they're in trouble. You know, part of what I do now is I'll clear spaces for people, or you know, help people out, and 9 times out of 10, or, you know, 99 out of 100, it's situations where their fear or their superstition has created something that's actually taken form, because they put so much energy into how much they how committed they are to what this thing is, right? So I touched I broke a mirror, 7 years bad luck is the same as I used a Ouija board and now X and X is happening. So that's kind of how I see that. I don't mean to be dismissive of anybody's beliefs, but that's my personal take with my background.
Well, it's kind of like a law of observation thing. You're giving it the power by observing it.
Yeah.
But then I was going to ask too some of the items like the Spear of Destiny or the Crown of Thorns or these things we hear about throughout time. If there was a Christ, which a lot of religious books say that there was a man that walked on the planet and had this school of thought, do you think when his side was cut that maybe an energy or an essence could have been put into items that are still kept secret now?
Yes. And I think that collective belief would fuel that as well, especially over centuries. Imagine the bank of energy that's been placed into this. Even the belief in Christ would fuel the idea of a holy item, or I'm not sure what they call it, but like you said, the spear or the crown of thorns. Just the belief in Christ would then fuel the crown of thorns as a enchanted or supernatural item, something that's infused with power more than the physical and more than the normal.
So like if you can create anything and you become powerful, and then let's say like religion, that idea, even in the simulation theory, enough people believing in a Christ walking on the planet does create a Christ walking on the planet. And because the amount of people and then firm belief, like that faith of a child, that mustard seed stuff, it makes it a very powerful, real thing. And then I love this phrase in the Bible, but I think it just works so well with energy. Two in my name, it shall be. It's like if you and I are agreeing, now we're even more powerful. And then if other people see it, now they're observing it too. And now we're even more powerful. And then the more people that start thinking that this idea is powerful, it is. And so it is. It's like, then it becomes that witchy thing. And so it shall be.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why I think when so many people pray to their God, they actually receive something back from that, is because there is a well of source, or a well of intention and all of the things that are tied up in that's there. It's there in that God, or in that construct, however it is you'd want to place it. You think about all of the old Roman gods and all of the old Norse gods and whatnot, and there's been kind of a revival, or at least an attempt at a revival, and you hear Odin a lot now and whatnot. And what is it that when people do a ritual or wear like a symbol of that old god that's not even hasn't really been practiced as a religion in years and years and years, what is it they pull from that? They feel something. And you're
Nike.
Tapping into that. There you go. They're tapping into that bank that was created once upon a time. Yeah, for sure. And I've often wondered if part of enlightenment is understanding, instead of looking at it as a god, you start to look at it as all of these gods that have been made, and understand their usefulness, purpose, and their validity and their worth, and at the same time not being subject to them. But yeah, I absolutely believe that, and have seen, the power of faith is legit. Power of prayer is legit.
I have seen miracles through Christ, through people's beliefs in Christ that have amazed me. I've seen people's work with energy in a way and magic of things in nature that make my jaw drop to the floor. And so I do think that kind of intention and knowing. There's like a knowing, but then there's also it's a knowing without ego, because you know, like a child knows. Like you're like, oh, the ocean touches the sky, or the firefly lights up. It just does, and you don't sometimes need an answer of why it does. It's like your head asks all these questions, but then you just enjoy the firefly.
That's right. I think that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, doesn't it just make problems once you have to why can't you just enjoy the firefly? You know.
Is there a place with all of this that I know already now, like looking at the time that I've had you here, I'm like, okay, well, I'm already going to have you back. We're going to have to do like all that. I feel like we're just scratching the surface on so many things. But what would be ritual would be almost like sigil, but you're going through actions and putting the intentions into it.
Yeah. Ritual is a great way to heighten your own emotions, right? And so when you perform a ritual, it creates a pattern that you can repeat over and over. So it's something that becomes you're familiar with, right? Immediately there's trust there, there's familiarity. But then on top of that, the ritual can create heightened emotions in you or in a group. And that can be super potent and powerful as far as bringing your intention into reality or into the world. And so, you know, if the ritual has words that you believe are ancient, and that you feel that whenever you say them, you almost feel it shake your soul, you know, within your body, and you chant these words, and, you know, you take these emotions and you take these actions and you do these things, and then the ritual comes to an end, and, you know, in that process, perhaps you wear certain clothes, or you light certain candles, or, you know, there's different things. As you do these things and your emotion is heightened, it's such a powerful tool to have it become that much more meaningful, that much more real, that much more already in existence, you know, whatever your intention is. So ritual is a very potent, it's almost like the next step past symbolism is ritual, because that makes you the symbol, right? So.
It's more of the LARP. That's what I always bring it back to. I think the live action role play is so important. It's like it's such a high form of magic to put on the clothes of the thing and be the thing, act like the thing, and then you become the thing.
There you go. Well, see, I thought that, but now I'm picturing myself going lightning bolt, you know, as a wizard in the park. But yeah.
I keep hoping I'm like, how far does this thing go? If I am energy, if we are conductive, if I'm watching people in videos stick magnets to their arm, I want to be conductive in a way, like, can I meditate and make it flow through like a silver cord between my fingertips? Can I sit with, like, you knee to knee? And I don't know why I have this idea of sitting across from people knee to knee, holding their wrists, and like like I'm just gonna plug into some next level shit. But it also seems so hella intimate. It's almost like an intimacy in my awakening. There's an intimacy that comes with the spiritual that's so far past this old 3D level, like sexual, but the intimacy so much more. It feels so much more raw and naked. That being a married person, it's been like a tiptoe of like, oh, okay, these are energies and these are things, and then like all this stuff is flowing through me, and this is okay. This is like this new form of intimacy that's okay. But it just felt like I was open and so raw and so authentic with people, like just revealing honest parts of myself, even that I was just discovering in the conversation that you and I might share, like, oh my gosh, here's this whole thread of something that I didn't even know was in there. And then sharing it in this raw moment, it felt like cheating, because it was this new level intimacy that I was achieving. And that's where people I think it's so interesting to me in our society how I see it through every TV show, every television thing. And I mean, they educate kids with it in school, how important it is to send everything up through that route, how important it is to make everything really sexual, and how that's the most amount of intimacy you can share is like making your junk rub together and, or in each other or out of each other or whatever way sexually, you know, your thing. But it's like, whoa, the levels to this game now are so far past my flesh that, like I was saying, like sitting across from you, like meditating seems so intimate.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because when you connect with individuals like that, you see yourself differently, but you see them differently. And like you say, it's so close. It almost feels like a violation of what you would, if you're in a committed relationship, you're like, well, that was what was technically defined as supposed to be close up close, right? So it almost feels like a violation. And then you realize, wow, I'm really even putting that relationship in a box too. But so much of the process is about overcoming these. And this is why I think in the dogmatic things, they talk about overcoming attachment, is because the things we get caught up in hold us back. So if we get attached to the idea that sex is the ultimate expression of this or that, then we're no longer able to see past that. And in the same way, if you just look at your attachments, what you hold as, what you take for granted as being the way it is, or quote unquote true, you don't have to let all that stuff go and just become some weird transcendental blank slate. But to be able to look at it and understand that precious illusions exist, you don't have to get rid of them. But if you understand they are precious illusions, you're that much better off, right? So, but yeah, that ability to connect in a true heart to heart, it's like in that state, lying doesn't exist. All of the things that create value or identity almost sort of fade away, and it's just two souls, right? And it's intense, and it's I don't know. I think that's the way we're all meant to chill together. Honestly, it's just it's very not 3D. It's very beyond the way that we function in this reality. So come across as very intense.
Yeah, it's like intense and beautiful and scary and sorrowful and lovely, and it's this whole weird song. It's a whole weird dance. I do think the better you get just at maybe in the idea of like the male female idea of what people would think, or you can look at a plug in your wall, that same idea, like that is how you plug into people's energy. Like you plug into it or they plug into you, and then you decide how to flow. And sometimes it's different. Like sometimes they're the female and you're the male, and sometimes sometimes somebody's relaying something, like dropping something off, and sometimes somebody's picking something up. And sometimes people are planting a seed, and sometimes people are birthing an idea. And yeah, it's so not 3D. And it's even like these, I kind of, and like all the animals that were put here were just, a monkey taught us how to climb a tree and eat a banana, and a tiger taught us how to hunt alone, and a pelican taught us how to fish with a net. Or I don't know. I look at everything kind of like that. I think something about our spirituality is like we're learning it as we go, and then somewhere I do believe God is growing if we're authentic in ourselves solo, whatever that means. Like I could never teach you how to be your part of God. I might be able to teach you 99.9%, but there's something, your puzzle, that's like as important as like Catholicism, or as important as Buddhism, or as important as like the dude on the island that just killed a couple fish, lit a couple fires, and lived till he was 30 and died. Like that everybody's ripple effect somewhere is like up close, single, it all seems like chaotic, but far enough back, it's like a perfect storm, I think.
Totally.
I hope it gets more perfect. I think that's what we're on right now. It feels like we're all hitting this state of flow, and I don't know if everyone's coming, but that's not my fight anymore. I just want to find the people who are here, like shoulder to shoulder with me, and then the people that are past me. But if you kind of think of everything as like a different idea, it's an infinite, everybody's past you somewhere and everyone's behind you somewhere else. And as long as you can cut the NPCs off and the looshers and the takers, just cut those people off. They're going through their own shadow work. There's people out here now, and people that we can find. And even if we can't touch them in our flesh, if we learn to work in these energies, you can feel them, like really feel them. And it's insane.
True. Yeah. Totally true. Like before we had the video connection or the, phone connection where we speak through these waves or however it is that it works. We connected through our biological means, right? We had the ability to connect to people distances. You go back in time and mothers were able to know what children were feeling. There's all sorts of examples of people who sense and know one another across distances that's not explainable. But I kind of feel like a lot of the technologies that we work through today are imitations of what our biology already had inside of us. And so, yeah, it seems like so many things are set up to keep us divided from ourselves or capped a little bit and therefore divided from one another. But when you start connecting, man, it's really hard to try to go back to non-connection or that, I would say dysfunction almost, but yeah, intense in a good way.
It's super intense in a good way. Is your wife, how long have you guys been together?
We've been together about 10 years now.
Oh, so she's been there for it through the whole thing pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it worked out. A lot of people lose their relationships in the process, or at least used to. But that was, she was kind of saw the before, the during, and the after, and then has been a part of everything. And it's been really good.
Is she on her own journey?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah. That's all you can ask for. Like, if you're going to partner up in this world, it has to be with somebody who's on some kind of journey. Otherwise, they're just holding you back from yours, I think. Yeah,
it's brutal, sometimes, and, things end and things begin. And once you start down a more meaningful and aware path, everything ends and begins for a reason. And so that's one of the things that can really hold folks back, is those key elements of your life. I mean, if it's career or if it's relationship or religion or whatnot, sometimes those things just can't be questioned. It takes a lot of, just guts to like question those things because they might go away. How terrifying is that?
I know, isn't it so scary? The idea of just how much control, the idea of something going away. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And then if they can put that idea on like every Black Mirror that we see, and like we were talking about religion, like if Christ, everybody believes in Christ and it makes him real, then everybody believing in anything kooky cocky or these negative energies or these bad ideas, it makes them really real too.
Yeah, that's I think that's why, that's part of, like, you talk about a loosh or whatnot. That's why it's so effective, is you build this structure and then it starts getting fed and then it becomes more and more tangible, at least in their eyes, at least in the ones who are feeding its eyes, And so, yeah, pretty, it's an interesting balance for the good, for the good or the positive or the building and balancing. There's the negative and the sort of imbalancing, right? And that push pull between the two, right on the center line of that yin yang symbol, right in that middle is kind of where the sweet spot is. That's where you want to be, because I think there'll always be polarity, but if you can stay right in that center zone, it's a very balanced, good view, good perspectives. That's a good place to be. But I don't know if we could exist without the polarity. I really don't.
I don't think so either. I don't know if it's my Scorpio or what, but I almost I thrive on the polarity a little bit sometimes. I love to dabble in it. I like to, even if I don't, I apologize to everybody I love out there and anyone who loves me. I know I do this sometimes where it doesn't matter the idea, and you could have heard me yesterday and been like, bitch, you 100% agreed with me yesterday. Like, it's just my brain does this thing where I just have to think of the polarity. Whatever you're saying, it's my brain's just like, I don't mean to be such a skeptic. It's just in there, but I think it's just to constantly bring me back to center, because the second it enters my brain and I think I believe something now, I'm doing it to myself. It's like it's just a constant thought inside there. And that's probably if somebody's like, hey, Chain, do you want to drink a water? I'm like, what, bitch? And they're like, oh, sorry. I'm just like, I'm over here arguing with my own polarities.
That's the downside of the human experience, is you've kind of got to be human as you go through it. You could see past this this mortal coil, or whatever you want to say, into realms beyond, and past this sort of semi-reality into realms beyond. But we're literally driving this body in order to run through all this, and so it comes with some requirements in some degree. You know what I mean? At least at first, right? So
it's pretty wonderful overall. I mean, for me,
right.
As hard as it is, I'm really trying to find beauty in the darkest parts.
Yeah. I was telling my son, he's the angsty teenager stage, and he was, looking into nihilism and whatnot. And I'm like, well, welcome to the black pill. That's a great stepping stone. And I said, you have to realize, regardless of what time you're born in, regardless of, if you were born in, the slums of Rome, whatever your time, you would find beauty in that aspect of that living, regardless. And so it's not ours to try and lament this or that. It's ours to appreciate the moments as they're given and play our part as, as our stage is set or whatnot. And yeah, it's, I just kind of think that we'll find our way to either positive or negative, regardless of the circumstances, war-torn Bosnia, or, decadent America, or wherever it is. I think we'll find our way to our positives and our negatives. So.
I love it. I'm so grateful that you came on, and I really think you have such a beautiful energy, Caleb. I'm glad we got to hang out face to face.
Me too. Thank you.
Do you want to leave anyone with any final thoughts or homework or anything?
If you can all see my finger wag at you. No.
That's your finger? No.
I just, I really appreciate being able to speak with you. I appreciate you, and, seems like there's a lot of people you're connected to that are really shining bright in your own ways. And it's, it's a little bit foreign to me, because I might be on a little bit further down the path age-wise, but I can recognize this individual genius kind of shining through these people, different people, and it's such a good thing to see. So yeah, whatever you think you're supposed to be doing, you're probably right. Like, that's what I would say. Just do more of whatever it is that's making you, and the world will be better. Be better for it.
Tell everyone where to find you.
I do have a website. It's theprimalbeast.com. And that's probably the best place right now. There'll be some Instagrams listed on there too. So.
Perfect. I'm secretly glad that's the only place right now because I'm going to keep you to myself for a little longer. Before it's like, okay, hit this Instagram up and hit this, and then you're, yeah, I like hanging out with you, and I feel like you're kind of like my magic sensei right now.
Awesome. I'll totally take that title.
Oh, perfect. Well, thanks, Caleb, the magic sensei. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
See ya.
So she has been Chaney, and now she's off to smoke a blunt. See you next Tuesday, you fucking cunts.
But not really. Chaney like Dick, but not really. And then it fell flat for a lot of years where people didn't know who he was. But now Liz, like Liz, but not really. Or Lon Chaney. I can tell if anyone's cool or if they have any kind of idea of anything going on up here where it's something deeper. If they're like, oh, like Lon Chaney, the actor. And I'm always like, okay, all right, you're taking it to the next level.
Points, yeah.